Yak echawi yuxatini ya yagi. Echana achtu yak echonache wushkanach.
Recording in progress.
Wudu da at ya hayukatangi dat. Ya awekagachi ak hakayagachi tlak stakat yuan. Yewe achtu ye tia yidat. Kleidina wecho ach ya ach kak klein. Ke u ich. Yande ya yanaitlak. Yande ya yanaitlak. Ye awe achtu ye ti. Ya ye jne dat. Wasach tu yuk ya hain yuhas qawul atkin. Ya chaku qaku. Aqawe hastu yukatangi aya achtuasagu gadein qayi achchi. Ye kukwati yuhan, ye kukwati gunilchish. Great to see everybody. Thanks for coming. Always happy when we're studying Tlingit together. I was just thinking about a thing I heard my uncle Herman Davis yell one time. Yande ya yanaidlak. You're right there on the verge of success, which is important because it's like he says, like you've been paddling in this canoe through a storm, and you finally see the land. But that doesn't mean you stop paddling, like just set your paddle down in the water, like right. But it does just recognize that success. I think one thing collectively that we've got to figure out is how to celebrate the successes a little bit more vibrantly. It's hard to do in COVID, and it's hard to do just in general. But I think we need to do a little bit more acknowledgement of folks and what they're doing and how amazing it is. No matter where you are, I think if you just look back at your language journey a year, 2 years, 3 years back, like it's amazing to think about stuff. Like there's all this stuff that you didn't know and that now you know. And I know sometimes it's daunting. One time we were at a language immersion and one of my colleagues, and she stood up and she held up this glass of water and she said, like, I feel like everything I know is in this cup of water and it's getting full. I was like, oh, that's beautiful, beautiful. And then she pointed, we could see the ocean, and she says, and that's the knowledge that's out there. And she starts crying, and we're all crying, right? Because it's tough. It's tough at any time to think about like how much pressure there is to learn and to use it and to be correct and everything. But just know that you're on the path, and the path should be a path of celebration and love and accomplishment. And we're gonna all do our best to make sure that that's what that path is. So Tuesday we did quite a bit of grammar stuff, which could be pretty intense. I like to do that kind of stuff. I think it unlocks a lot, but I think it makes us tired and also just sort of disoriented. So we're just going to move back into this Tl'anaxéedáḳw story. I think all the eyeballs have been plucked out. One more thing's going to happen with the eyeballs, so sorry. But then we'll move on from eyeballs and we'll be in some other area. So we'll do that until the break. Then I think we'll come back, see how everybody feels, and start checking in with the translation work that you folks are doing. As always, ask questions if you got them. We're going to move into the story. I got to figure out where. It was a little while ago. So I think this thing had been trying to pluck out her eyes, had been running up on her, trying to get in through this brush house. And I don't know, maybe we'll just, I think we did this one already. I think we did that one. I must make the effort. Did we do this stuff yet? When a woman had a child, they would keep her in bed for over a month.
I think that this was like exactly more or less where we left off.
Okay, so let's start with this line 93. We'll just start here. Whoever wants to read up to to the end of the sentence at least. If you want to go a little further, you can, and then we'll just come back, and then we'll just say, do you see anything you want to talk about? And if I find anything I want to point out, then I will. If you're wondering how to say, so there's this one verb that I do want to talk about. Oh, let me open the chat so I don't miss too much. Line 98. Sheesh. We'll back up just a hair then. So there's this phrase like ye aya u. Someone is that verb ye aya u or ye awa u. Yena'u. You might hear it in those three different ways. It could mean to wear something, or to use something, or to put something somewhere. So it kind of depends on the context. Same verb for like cha'ate yechatna'u. Same verb. And that's the verb we use for having a baby. So you could say um, this one, yet awa u. In this case, yet would do a u. People have babies. We know the women have the babies, right? So even though that's a fourth person subject, we know that's when a woman had a baby. But if you said yet u, I had a baby, like that's how you'd say it. Anyways, let's just pick up from this line. Who wants to read?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Jock, yat, wudu, u, woo. Click des yanach, awe, ye ak ka, aya, ku, kundu, wheat. Kundu, wheat.
Sheesh. Okay. Chak is long ago, right? It could mean for a long time. It kind of depends on how you're using that word. Yet would do u. What this little suffix is doing is saying sort of like when that happened, when people had a baby. Kijk dis, 1 month. Yanach. So sometimes it's yanach and sometimes it's kanach. But this is how we talk about over a length of time. So you could say dech tauk yanach, dech tauk kanach. Sometimes it's yanach, kanach, kanach. But for 1 month, aweh ye ut. Ye ut is a bed. Ka on, kundu wage. This is actually the same verb as this one right here. But instead you have fourth person people right here. Fourth person. So people would put people on a bed. That's literally what it says. And that's how you'd say they wouldn't let the woman get out of bed yet. So and then the CH on here means it happens all the time. And once you put a CH or some kind of consonant on a verb that ends with oo, it'll switch to way. So that's just a something that happens, right? Oo switches to way. E, you could just close it. Ah will change to a, right? So those are just a couple of things. Ah to a, oo to way, if you close that open ending. Okay. Let's read the next one. Let's go.
Tl'anaxéedáḳw Yahweh sa Yesu Kushadusnukch Wutsakakach at Anakuch.
Sheesh. So the tla is when or then. Kadain is to do something very well or carefully. Qa in this case means to feel good. So qayati, it's all right, it's good. Qaquti. So there's a lot of fourth people in here, right? So when people feel good, that's the way that one's working. Qayati. Qakhatyati, I feel good. Right? Especially like in the context, like if I was wounded and I sort of got myself back to feeling better, Qakhatyati, I feel good. Tsa is a little thing that means kind of only then, just at that time. So usually like the first thing, like only when this thing happened would the other thing happen. Yesu is now or right at that time. Kushadusnukch. Uh, again, so shinde is to sit up or to get up. So in this case, so people would get up, right? And that's literally what it's saying. It's like, but then there's again fourth person. So people would get people up. So it's sort of like there is one without a subject, which means just to sort of to get up, to wake up. Wutsaka is a cane or a staff. Kag on at anagutch. People always walked around. So this is how you'd walk around with a cane. Okay. Okay. Who wants the next one?
Yarachat.
Hmm.
Away do root sagayi awatan a day way at kushligasi ye.
Sheesh. So there's that Wutsaka. So it's a staff. I would actually, I would expect it to go higher than low. But Awatan. So this is, I think Tl'anaxéedáḳw was talking earlier about like a whole bunch of verbs for something to lie down at a place. There's also a whole bunch of verbs for carrying things. So this is carrying kind of a stick-like object. And then ade, towards it. We'at the place where people had migrated to. Right. Which was their campsite at this time. So this story probably goes back to when the village of Ak was a pretty new place. Okay.
Yeah, dude.
Just,
Oh, go ahead.
it's all good.
Oh, it's a polite competition.
Hey, before we get started, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So when right here, the sentence right before the end, this kutlikas, and over here they say the campsite, but you said it was the place that people migrated to.
Mm-hmm.
How would you think that was the campsite?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And so the answer to that is it depends how you're translating. So when we think about this process, it's Jeff Lear and Elizabeth Nyman. So he records Mrs. Nyman and she tells the story. Her Tlingit name is Seydiyah. And then they go back and listen to the recording and he writes down all of the Tlingit and then they together work on the translation. And so this might be what she said, but then they were like, oh, well, let's just say campsite because then people will know where they were. So it kind of depends. And some of those answers are like, well, who are you translating for? Are you writing this story so that people who don't know anything about Tlingit are going to read it and enjoy it as a nice story? Or are you writing it for the Tlingit language learning community, in which case you wouldn't do as many word order switching or sometimes just these substitutions of things. Like sometimes like the language will literally say, it's over there. But then the translation will say, the knife is over there, or whatever the thing is. They'll name the thing, even though it's not in the Tlingit. So here the verb is, and so this is where it is fun to learn Tlingit, because you can read this stuff and be like, oh, I know other things about this, right? And so gas, the verb root here is gas, which is a house post. So the verb is like literally like we're going to go house post somewhere. And that means we're going to go somewhere else. That's usually what that means. And so it's really interesting because then it ties itself to these bigger migrations. At this time, the Tl'inaxéedáḳw were probably migrating north and forming these villages and stuff, which is why maybe some of these things happened. The village wasn't fully established yet and stuff. So yeah, that's a really good question. So the ut part means to arrive at. Tl'anaxéedágsmå means people migrated. And then the ye means that place where that verb happened. So when you put it together, at Tl'anaxéedágsmå, you have the place where people migrated to. And you could have a whole bunch of other verbs there. Kahwe, the place where they drank coffee, right? And so this is how a lot of place names are made. But you could also say, hey, let's go to that place where we pick berries. And you would use a structure just like this.
Nishish.
Ah. Did the niceness standoff end yet? Is someone going to take it?
We'll let the nicer guy take it. After you, my friend.
Dang it. But then in self, you're nicer. Okay. Dasoets uch utle tlkat chu tletsu wake onzu tlet kusti chute at kautlekis.
Okay. Sheesh. Let me check something really quick.
Yeah, I was gonna say. No, I'm just kidding. But I was too nice.
That's right. I'm looking at the verb for putting out the fire. So let me show you guys this as I look it up, just because I have a thought, I have a suspicion. So one, I'm going to go look for the verb put out. And this is really interesting. Like as you look up how to say things, this is another translation exercise. Like, oh, how do we even say what we're trying to say in English, right? Because I don't usually say, hey, put out the light, right? I usually say turn off the light. And so, yeah, it looks good. I was wondering if there's an underline on the K, and there isn't. So here it is to put something out. And some of these, whether it's ka or ya, it's not always clear to me. There might be a little bit more work that needs to be done, but I'll say yan yaklakis uitsina. So here's one spot where we could look at it, and we see these sample sentences. Istuchuake akautlakis. Did your stove go out? So there's a couple things you're going to learn. One is this has this W in it, so this is what we call the perfective mode, where you're talking about the verb, just whether or not it has happened. If in that perfective mode, the verb stem is short and high, that's a zero conjugation. That means we should expect kashakits for the command form to put it out. So we can test that kind of theory, and we'll get back to the story in a second. Let me open the verb thing. Hold on. My browser's just all Zoom ET. It's just remnants of going to Zoom meetings. So let's look up this verb root and then find some. Oops, zoom in here. So we'll scroll on down to keys and see what we could find. To put out. So here's to put out or turn off a fire, to turn off the light. Yakshakis. Yakshakis. So that's turn off the light or put it out. Put out that fire. And then here's for something to go out. And so, and again, we're seeing the ka in some places. So here you have yakaushakis for the fire went out. Okay. So the differences between going out and put it out is one is it happens. There's no subject there. See, nobody's making that happen. You go up to this one, there is a subject there. So when you were to change it, now you could say, I put out the fire. So like I poured water on it, whatever you need to do to put out fires. And putting out fires is the same way we talk about turning out a light. Okay, so here we were. So here it is, kautlakits. Okay, so there's a couple things also to note. Kle is then, Chutle is just then. So whenever you're switching, you see a speaker switching to chutle, it's a little bit more immediate. These things are getting more closely tied together as far as time goes. Das away, what is that? Also, just then. Everything, right? Cut. And sometimes you will have an at or a ka. So cut is all. Cut is like every single. It's just putting a little bit more emphasis on it. So you could say cut ka, every single person. Cut at, every single thing. Cut yuhan, every single one of you all. And then just not again that fire also didn't exist. So is the negative form of qudziti. Qudziti, it exists. Doesn't exist, or it's not there. Capitalize that one. So just then, it was out. It had gone out. What are they doing here? Let me match. I guess I should match up the punctuation. Okay.
Yadu Hat Tl'anaxéedáḳw. Achowe Tleka Yachdak Shawa Yish.
Sheesh. So Achawe is a really good thing to learn how to use because of that, right? So and just learning how to use these things, so much of talking is like tying things together, either through time or sequence or cause. And so Achawe, that is why. There's so many things you could use that for. Whether you're telling some big story, like that's why the salmon are in the rivers. That's why we call ourselves this thing, right? That's why I didn't want to go over there. Whatever it is. Ka yach. This comes from ya, which is a face, which is high tone, and then dach. Sometimes when you put dach, which is away from, onto something that ends with a vowel, you'll end up with ach. It'll just contract. Yach, from the face. Dak shawayish, to pull it, to reveal that she pulled it off and revealed their faces. Both those things are going on at the same time. So this verb root yish is to pull something that's light, like a curtain or a blanket. So again, Tlingit loves all the categories. Okay, just in case you ever need to know how to say this, here's how you say it. Whoever wants this one. If you haven't read yet, it's a great time to do it.
Is this a great time to be the bad guy?
You need to know how to say like their eye sockets were full of blood. Well, I hope you never have to say. Let me edit my comment.
Dasawe su chutchatshe klekha wachlita yakdak shayawelitsit.
Sheesh. So here's again, we see how she's using these what statements? Dasawetsu. Sort of like, what else? Right? So that's a really probably accurate way to interpret that one. What else, right? Just a narrative delivery device, right? So we know how to do this stuff in English, right? Like how to tell a story and, so like dasawetsu. And so it just also in conversation, right? So like I'm making a list to go to the store. You're telling me what to bring. Dasawetsu. What else? Chutle, just then. Ch'us, only. She, blood, that's the blood part. Then peoples, waqshita. You have a walk, and then the eye has a cavity. This is kind of weird. The eye has a cavern, I guess you could think of it. And this is shitak. So that K will be there sometimes. Because if you say waqshitakt, that's like looking right in someone's pupils, which means you're looking into the cavity of their eye. That's how Tlingit thinks about it, right? It's pretty wild stuff. So you can see the walk there. That's probably an L classifier. And then tak, which is the like down in the bottom of a cliff or down in a cavity of water. Yach is to completion. So you could say yach chasecha, I ate it all, right? Yun or yach can pop up right before a verb, which means not only did it happen, it was finished. That's why you say yun geiwane. Are you finished? Are you ready? Dach is something I hear inland speakers use more than coastal speakers. And it means plural, non-human. Okay? So, and it's not used that often. And it could also, in some cases, mean like putting a little bit more emphasis on every single one of them. And they are human, but then there's something weird about them, how they're just kind of laying there with their eyes gone. So, I don't know. This verb, shayauchitzit, means somebody, so there's a third person subject in there, filled it full of liquid. So for something to be full, it depends with liquid or solid, right? So shayauchehik would be they filled it with rocks or sand or something. Shayauchitzit, they filled it with water. So in this, the one who did it is probably, that's an interesting thing, because you could say shayawasit and it's full, but this has this other classifier which means somebody did it. So there you go. Who wants the next one?
Tl'anaxéedáḳw yana good play you.
Sheesh. So we see all these parts we're starting to recognize more and more just then. And just keep an eye on this tle and chutle. How and when to use it is really interesting. You just got to sort of keep an eye on it, get a feel for it. Peoples, again. Chu is among. And then you have this suffix, which means to move around at. Chachuch, among the people. Right? We're not going around people now because that big sickness is among us. But the chu is among. Yanagut, she is, they are walking right now. You. This is something you'll see speakers, especially like kind of master storytellers, they'll end a sentence like this and it means just like that. And sometimes they're doing something with their hands or, and it's a combination of things. You is like just like that. Okay. Next reader.
Kashaya Dahain you are chutle clash to Tl'anaxéedáḳw ye ayute.
Sheesh. So Shayed on its own means lots. But you could say, you could put an object pronoun in there. Ha Shayed there are many of us. Has Shayed there are many of them. Ye Shayed there are many of you all. It's got to be a plural because there can't be many of me, right? It doesn't make sense. But this is the fourth person people. Kush Shayed there are many people. Yu'ah, this is another really good narrative device. It means so they say, right? And it's just sort of a narrative thing that you just put in there. It's just, it's a nice thing to say, right? Chutle, just then. Kleltsu, not again. So Tl'anach, this is how you, nach is a, seems to be a different suffix here, but this is how you count people. So you go from Tl'ech to Tl'anach, Dech, Dachnach, Nask, Naskinach, Dachun, Dachuninach, Kejin, Kejininach. So that's how you count people. How many people are here? Tl'anach, Dachnach, Naskinach, Dachuninach. Good thing to practice, right? But when you say Tl'anach, it depends on how you're saying it, right? So it could mean alone, or it could mean just one person, right? And in this case, Klel su cha Tl'anach, not even one of them. That's how that combines. So you have not, again, just one. So like not even one of them. Cha ye a uti. Was untouched, right? So just in terms of how that one's working, like I think of ye a uti is they're just there. They are just there. Okay. Now this should be the last eyeball thing, and then we'll move on from the eyeballs. But this one's kind of long. If you could read up till here, that's pretty good.
Ade away u ach ayanach yak kwalinik akua ade away u ach way. Did you say to ka here or where? Sorry.
So read both of those maybe.
Okay. Kawagi watchi. Kawagi watchi.
Okay, so now you know how to say toasted eyeball. So Quech is to cook something really fast. Like you don't see it used very much. I'll have to add it to my cooking verb, not the eyeball part, but the quech part. So just sort of walking through here. Ade, awe, u, ach. So this ade is really interesting. And when you add the hearing it, it's really like it works different than in English, right? Because the hearing of it is over that way. So it's sort of like if you're just talking with someone and you pointed, I hear it over there. I can hear it over there. So that's what the ade part is. Like she keeps hearing it. The yanach part here, this is how you could say going past something. You drove past the store. If we're supposed to go to the store, this is how I'd say you went past it. This could also mean just for someone to drive by. I saw them driving past my house. That's how that one works. Yakauchlenik is to tell, there's something extra going on, but telling a story. Akua, although, so she's like, oh, wait a minute. Toasted eyeballs. Oops. Someone want to do that part now?
You aware at Uchikane Kawaki Kwach
Guachki. Guachki. Kawagi Guachki. You awe ayaka we wait at.
Sheesh. So you owa. So atwajukain is to jump around. So it's jumping around. So if it's a bird, you think of it hopping, right? It's the same verb in English. If that was a person, dog, frog, atwajukain, it's jumping around. We get the toasted eyeballs again. So guach is the root. Then the ch is the repetitive thing. So like eyeballs are continuously toasted. You away ayaka. That is what it is saying, right? So this is an imperfective. It's what we'd call a present tense verb. Wait at that thing over there. So you have wait or wait at. They're pretty interchangeable. Yat yat at. So those are pretty good to be able to use. Just like wait that one. Wait got shot. Grab that one. Right? Yat grab this one or whatever. It's just to reference which one you might be talking about. Okay, who wants to read next? Read as many as you want.
I'll go next.
Okay.
Asaya adeye ye dua achwe we tsa atsi we a ta yeti.
Sheesh. Yeah, what? This part, we kind of jumped over this part.
Oh,
Ha,
sorry.
ha. That's okay. Ha, ha. This is like there's a whole bunch of ways to say things like this, which is just, it's another narrative device. You'll see some speakers go, ha, or they'll go, ha, ha. It's just like saying, wow. You know, you're kind of really invested in the story. Oh my. There's a few different ways to translate these. Some speakers will go, he, and then they'll sort of move on to the next part. It's just sort of, you're keeping it interesting. Ya anekit. So this is the verb to be suspicious. So like you're suspecting something, like you either think somebody did something. This would also be like, you know, sometimes people have partners and the partners are messing around. So yeah, anekit. You're suspicious of them doing something. Usually not very good, right? There's another one which you could say like ye awaji, which would be like they thought this thing, but this one is more like you're suspecting someone of doing something, usually pretty bad. Asaya is there's a whole bunch of these things too, like asewe, askiwe, you know. And so basically you have which is this phrase, this little particle is repeating twice. Just puts focus on something. It's the same one we hear in awe, aya. It's the same one we hear when we give someone a name. They'll say khone That's what that Sometimes people say kunchish It just puts a little focus on there. Se. Oh, I'd expect this one to probably be high toned as well. Se sort of it's not quite a doubt particle, but it just sort of softens whatever's being said. And then ya is here. So asiya. Well, actually, you know, and there's different ways to interpret these and how they're used. So sometimes they're saying maybe, actually, well, indeed. So it just tends to turn focus back on. It's just saying, check this thing out, check it out. Ade you dua achch. And dua achch is interesting because it means people hear it, but this is also saying like it's making a sound. So you could say, dasa dua achch. And that is saying, what is this sound, right? Wait, that bird, wait, tayeti, that's its name, is lake bottom child. Okay, we'll do this one, then we'll take our break.
Satsi ayu use kanik. Wait. Tsatsi ayus kanik cha'an ku'a you talk away kudziti.
Sheesh. So yeah, ayu, it's over there. That's a bird over there. Yus a kanik. This is what people are saying right now. And this is what they are saying, right? You hus a kanik. So this letter S, so hus pluralizes a third person in the verb. So the singular them now becomes a plural them with the hus. But if you put a vowel before hus, it'll often just contract to the letter S. So use, and so that's how you say it, use. It just sounds like one word, right? Yusakanik. And so just sort of when you see these, like just getting in that habit of seeing how they sort of start smushing into each other. Cha'an. So ku'a and cha'an are kind of similar things. So let's start with ku'a. Ku'a could sometimes do a bit of a logical switch. So you might say, Hindi toasaku khatko'a kahwe. They want water, but I want coffee. So it's a bit of a sort of a but or although type of thing. Other times you're just calling attention to what you're talking about. So maybe we're switching the subjects that we're talking about. Cha'an is kind of similar, but it's a little bit more like nevertheless. Despite this thing that you just heard, here's this other thing. My favorite one that I heard was they're talking about this thing called kunaye, which we don't have on the coast. Kunaye. They live in the interior. In English, they're called a chipmunk. So they were talking about kunaye. This one elder was describing it. We were playing this game where we're describing animals. And she said, they have little tiny hands, really tiny, but they still exist because they eat with those little hands. It was really cute, just a little cute little sentence. So that's what the cha'an is doing. So it's a bird. People say it's a bird. How, nevertheless, despite that though, you are that lake residing at the bottom, Tl'anaxéedáḳw, is where it exists. It lives on the bottom of the lake. I don't even know what kind of bird this is. Okay. Any questions or thoughts or anything?
I have a question, and have you ever thought about like we have this transcription and then we have this actual that you walk us through. I'm wondering if it could be that we could have both, because you could have like for Tlingit learners and for storytellers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Side by side, and it would be helpful.
because I think I want to encourage SHI to do a reprint of some of these. This one was from Yukon Native Language Center. But to do some reprints of these stories where there should be sort of, I don't know how they do it, probably a big workbook, but so they'd have the Tlingit here and then a cell, like a space in the middle, and then the translation so that you could do some work. And so that's why some of the projects I've had students do and student workers do over the years was to retype some of these older stories so that we have them, so we could do whatever we want with them. Because one of the things you can do as a learner, and one of the goals with showing you folks stories like this, is that you can go into these stories now, and you can go farther into these stories than most people can. And then that's how you just sort of dive in, and you don't have to figure everything out because it's translated. So sometimes I'll give you some stuff and be like, translate that, right? But then other times, like, here's some stuff you can just go in and mess around with, especially if you want to become a storyteller, if you want to sort of understand what the logic is that's going on below the surface of this stuff, then it really does help to take these deep dives. And then sometimes you'll come out and say, like, I don't know what this thing is. I want to know what this thing is so I know how to use it. And then we can have those conversations. But yeah, we've talked about that quite a bit. And sometimes there's some debates because, like, um, I think when the Downhowers would translate, they'd try to make things sound really good in English, which is great because part of their goal was saying, you know what, people don't include native literature in school. So we got to show them that stuff is amazing. So that was really a part of their goal, as well as using it as a translation device. But and then Lear and Nyman, like a lot of this work was, I think, documenting the knowledge of Elizabeth Nyman, because some of these, you don't just have this story, but you have her whole life story that she tells and multiple tellings, which are amazing. Um, and then there's this Raven book that'll come out someday. And so as we sort of do that translation work, we're often thinking about that, like the learners. For me, it's all about like make stuff for the learners so that they can continue to explore this stuff because you can keep coming back. And maybe next time you come in, you're looking for verb roots. Oh, there's T, which is to be. And there's neek, which is to tell information. And there's ach, which is to hear or make a sound. And here's kit, which is to be suspicious, right? And to start sort of, so every time you come in, you keep coming back into these stories with sort of a new mission. Yeah,
Yeah,
really good point.
and that's why I was thinking you could honor the work for the story that they were telling in the way that it makes sense to some people. But for us right now, we need this, this specifics that you give us. Thank you, Ganesh Tish.
Okay, so I'll put in the chat. That's a link to the folder where a lot of these I just when I make copies of them, whether it's a photocopy or someone else has done it, or to retype them, they're all located there. So it's a folder called Shkashnik, and it's located in the Tlingit curriculum folder. And there'll also be, if I find recordings of some of these stories, especially in the Downhauer works. I haven't found the Elizabeth Nyman recordings. I'll probably just ask Jeff where they're at. But then it's helpful also to be able to sometimes read it and listen to the storyteller telling it as you read it. Like that's a whole other exercise. Then what you can do with that stuff is play it, pause it, repeat it just like they said it. Just try to sound exactly like them so that you can mimic them and just think about the pacing and the pattern and the way that they're sort of saying. I think it's really helpful. Good points, great points. Sheesh. Anyone else? Okay, come back at a quarter till. Let's take a 9-minute break, get some, stretch your legs, do what you need to do. See you in a few. Okay. You guys want to keep going with this one? Switch to the other one.
Let's do it, man.
What?
This is pretty good.
Okay, stay on the Tl'anaxéedáḳw story. Okay.
Oh, right.
All right. Somebody read the line.
Okay. Awe. Khana ya. No. Ha ana ya kudutliagat.
Sheesh. So, a'owe, that is really it. Ana yakudutliqat. People offended it with what they said. This is the verb that's often used for saying something that gets the animals to come take you, calling it a name, saying it's ugly, saying something really nasty about it, teasing an animal. And then that's the verb for saying something to offend it. Especially, it's a cultural violation, right? To make fun of an animal, to tease it, to laugh at it, to call it bad names. Okay. Let's see. At least to that, you can do more if you want.
Haha. Wasaya Khatkukati. You are where to a T you are.
Sheesh. So there's a ha again. I use these guys. We kind of made a bit of a switch over the years to not use the quotation marks because they can get confusing if you have something that ends with an apostrophe. Wasayakhatkukati. So this is yati. We will recognize that verb as yati. In the perfective, it's wuti. Kukati, kukwati, yekwati. Those are all, the future has sometimes different ways to say the same thing. Ha, wasayakhatkukati. What will become of me? What am I going to be? Right, that's what she starts to think. You away to a T. So this to a T is to think of something. I'd probably write it like that. They say, okay. Who wants to read the next one?
Shuganach se gach shuta.
Sheesh. Shugunach is the first thing. So it kind of depends on how it's being used. You could put this in front of a noun. Say shugunach yak, the very first boat. Shugunach, whatever it is, the first one. But in the context of a narrative, shugunach would be at the beginning, the first thing. And it's kind of interesting. It's almost like it starts a whole new story. That's how I like to think of it. Tseh is like before. So if you were trying to order things, like do this before that, you would use tseh. Ach is crying. Shoot is sitting on the end of it. So it's kind of interesting, the way those things are constructed. Is the verb to be, for someone to be seated, a single person. Shoot she just sat on the end of it and cried. It could be kind of metaphorical what the end of it is.
Du kla has, du ish has, du ik has, du shaki has, du kak has, du sani has, se dak udehen, gak.
Sheesh. So this is, the hus is high toned. It's a pluralizer for kinship terms. Most kinship terms pluralize with hus. So her mothers do tla hus, her fathers, her brothers, her older sisters, her younger sisters, her paternal uncles. And just in terms of like which ones get named, right? It's all of them. These are all her people. These are her people. Tl'anaxéedáḳw utehin. She claimed, I would say she claimed their voices. That's what it sounds like to me. She claimed all of their voices. And yes, all you other husses is a great Tlingit joke as you're doing like, ish hus, sani hus, ha hus, kla hus, and all you other husses, right? So, yeah. So she's claiming all their voices, crying. So this is how they're talking about, she's lamenting them, she's, right? So you see them, obviously they're not coming back from this. And so she sees what happens and it pushes her over into this realm of grief. Next line.
Hawasa shewe sukshewe chat gugoti you away tuati you are.
Sheesh. So
Tongue twister.
yeah, this sukshewe. And so here you have sa. So hawasa is, it depends on the context, right? So a lot of times if someone's speaking and you said, hawasa, you're saying that's really how it is. You're affirming what they're saying. But when you have sa, which is this command form for naming something, just like in dasa, wasa, kunsa, then you add kshe, which is maybe or probably, perhaps. And then you add we. So it's just like sa. If you took sa we, then you smashed a kshe right in the middle of it. Sakshewe. It's something that's used in a lot of storytelling. And like the more things you tend to add to it, the more uncertain it becomes. So now when you have hawa sakshewe, what might ever become of me? I will be. Right? So she's really lost, really sort of thinking to herself, you owe it to a T, you are. That's how she was thinking. So the to a T we've probably heard like wasa it to a T, which could mean like, how are you doing? It could also mean, what do you want? Or what are you thinking? Depends on the context. But in this case, you owe it to a T. That's how she felt, or that's how she thought. They say. Okay, this one is very long. Let's see. Does anyone want to try to take it from the beginning to the end? Can you see it all on your screen?
What the hell? Agawe you are. Tleya shukuayi. Kach ko duayayi. Uawe. Tlenat aul diish. We shawat. Tlewe du yatku to cha kuna a suda suadade akaik tleyu Tsuan niade atu cha na atu ku dasa ku klewuch kna de ya akane jel.
Okay. Geesh, that was a lengthy one, right? So aqa'awe, that's a really good thing to know how to use as well when you're just doing stories. And then aqa'awe, and then this thing, and then this. Just how you move the story along. Ke yashugu ayi. So shugu is very similar to shugunach. So shugu ayi, the first one. That's what that one means. Shugu ayi, the first one. And so in this case, it's probably the first one she walked up to, right? That's what it's talking about. Kach kaudu ya. It's draped, it's lowered down over something. So that verb, somebody lowered onto something. Hu away. So this blanket that was covering someone. Kle not audiyish. Pretty interesting things. So kle is then. Na is the upper body. Just that's why you say na'at, upper body thing. That's what it really means. Aude yish. So here's this yish again, to pull something that's light, like a sheet or a curtain. It's a declassifier because she's doing it to herself. So that's how you know not aude yish. She pulled it over her own upper body. It packs a lot of things in this kind of small space. It's the way that Tlingit works. We shawat, the woman, ke we du yatku tsu, and her little child as well. So again, chaquna'a. Chaquna'a together means a different one. That's all it means, is a different one. As well, a dade, around, to go around it, akayiq kleyu. So she pulled, and now it's switched from yish to yiq. Yish is to usually lift up or sometimes move a light fabric type thing. This is a heavy thing. So now it's maybe a bigger blanket, right? So it's a different, maybe heavier blanket perhaps. Kleyu, like this. Again, a niyade is a, niyah on its own means, it has a bunch of different meanings. It could mean the area of, shielding, blocking, protecting. But a niyade usually means the next one over. So a lot of us probably know qanu for sit down. But if somebody left and then someone else came and sat in the chair that they already had, and then the chair next to them was empty, I might say, a niyade nanu, move over a chair, right? And then this is in the stories a lot too, like when Raven goes to the village looking for his eyeballs or his nose or whatever. They'll usually say, so they'll say, have you seen the alien's nose? And they'll say, no, try the next house over. So in niyade, it could also be the next one over. A niyade one of them. Tsu, again. Chakunatsu, so a different one, again. So this is how she's showing us, like another one, and another one, and another one. So here's another, so we're already getting set up for like a whole bunch of things, right? That's what the grammar is showing us, whole bunch of stuff. Then you name one of them, maybe a martin blanket, whatever, right? So this is what the what part does here. A lynx blanket. So what she's showing you here, like a whole bunch of different kinds of furs. There are all kinds of furs. Maybe this one, maybe that one, whatever. So this kina is to go over something. That's why you say kinak'at for a jacket. You could put ach kina, ach kinachyen dekin yesh. The raven's flying over me. But if you say wooch kina, that's on top of one another. So that's how the wooch can work. Wooch dach, around one another, right? Wooch kanade. Then this ya akanajesh. This is to pack a whole bunch of either the same type of thing or to pack something in a bunch of different little trips. So she's stacking them all up on top of each other, on top of herself and on top of her baby. And all of that's being communicated all at once. Next one. Oh, I guess it's right here.
Washke ye ya kuga tla. Excuse me, kagu tla. You are. Where do yatko to?
Geesh, so there's that finally again, and it's a regional thing. A lot of folks in this part, so around the Juneau area, probably say Satguyeka. In Atlin, we're hearing Kahwashke, and then Tessin would hear Dehua. Different ways to say the same thing. Finally, Yeya Kakutla. She's getting to be pretty round. This is for usually a person to be pretty round. They say, and her child as well.
Tutle de tlel dutin we du yadko.
Sheesh. Just then, that should probably be low. They tlel dutin we du yatko. So when the day like this pops up before the verb in a low tone form, that means it has already happened, right? So for example, if you were offering me some food, I might say, oh, dechwacha, I already ate. If you're trying to tell me something and I already know it, dechwasaku, I already knew it, right? And so just then, her child already could not be seen. So here's another one. Like we learned at beginning Tlingit, hit chatin, keet chatin, kis chatin. I see a killer whale. I see a house. I see a bracelet. Dutin, it can be seen. Kesh dutin, it cannot be seen. Kesh dutini tacha, no see 'em. It's a mosquito that people can't see. Next one. Anybody not read yet? Anybody haven't read in a while?
Hawa saya klech kawa chu klech klech du tu ushku cha ye an at a satani we hu klech sakat away not akadijit.
Okay, geesh. So hawasaya, like how is it, right? How could it be? Then, finally, just then, right? So sometimes you're gonna get these. you get a tle and a jutle following not long after. Klesh du tu ushka. You could also say klesh du tu wa ushka. It's fine. You can go either way. Klesh du tu ushka. So du tu wasagu wants, and then klesh du tu wa ushka. This is the opposite, not just the negative, but the opposite form of sigu. Ye on ut. Just, and this on is from in, so just then, just with it, ut satan, plural, the ones that are laying there. So this is for people to be lying there, but it's a bit unusual, I think. So they're people who aren't getting up. So this would be more like a stick-like object. So there's one that would use for living things to be laying around. The blankets, then everything, to cut all those blankets, all those furs, not a cow de jesh. So it's switching to a D classifier because she is putting them on herself. She's just piling every blanket there upon herself. Let's do the next one. I'm going to change this squash. Oops. Okay.
Aga awaita cha Yesu ki ye wuni awe guna ye kwagut cha kugei awe we do yatku tu kwashwe chika ten gawe ya una jik.
Sheesh. So aqa away is and then. Aqa away sa is more like and only then. So like a certain number of things. So like she had to get all of these blankets. That's what the sa does here. It was only then, after those things happened. Yesu, just now, the daybreak. Ye wuni yi awa, when it was there, when it was in being, when it was coming to be. She is going to start walking. Chakugei is aimlessly, recklessly, haphazardly. So what the reason why this is popping up, because like she has no idea what she's doing. She's just gonna go. Chakugei. And her child as well. Jika is really interesting. Usually you hear this as tuk, and that's where you get tukane. But unashik is to be in the tuk, which is a cradle board. That's how they used to do the babies up a long time ago. Tie them up real tight in the cradle board. Next one.
I'll do it.
Sheesh.
Aga away khan yua. Ude ku tis.
Okay, so there's a aqawe again. Hun is like a single person is standing. She's standing there, they say. Ude, way off into the distance. Kutis, it's to stare and to look for something. Okay, let's keep it going. I'm gonna add these things.
Tl'anaxéedáഥാxw. Ulkes away. Dot Skyway Tl'anaxéedáഥാxw.
Okay. So here's the da, right? Da, and the sa is actually right here getting kind of eaten up by this gi. Gi is really, it's the yes or no thing, right? So we usually hear it as ge. In the interior, it'll switch to gi. Ski, when you put them together, like it's really sort of just saying this is a really mysterious thing. That's what all this sakshiwe and asiwe and ski, all these little things just keep adding up to say like, she really doesn't know what's going on because it's very unusual. So when we have da sa, if we put something in between the da and the sa, this T will pop up. So that's why, like you'll say, da sa ituwasagu. What do you want? But you'll say, dot itinechsa iyati. What do you need? And that T pops up. It's just one of these things. There's other Tlingit words that have this, for like there's a consonant there, but it only pops up in certain situations. In this case, it pops up because this is there, which is part of this siti verb. Like if you say kagwan tan siti, that usually marks what the group is. Siti means to be one of these things. So in this case, it's a little complicated. Dat ske tse chat nachsati. So let's unfold this thing. So the tse is like, first of all, or you just sort of putting some word order there.
I couldn't hear what you said.
I gotta watch, and my watch is listening sometimes. I don't know. Okay.
Just trying to learn.
It's like, what should I become? Just be a watch. Just be a watch, okay? Chika watch cheseti. So, skiwe sa. What? Maybe first. But then we get chat nachsati. If you were to say chat nachsati, that's like, let me be this thing, right? And so this is what we call a hortative, right? So you were saying let it snow, let's go over here, let this thing happen, let it be. Those are all hortative verbs. They use this let thing in there. So in this case, she's saying, if you sort of put all the pieces together, what would I be able to become? Right? And so it's really, there's a bunch of stuff going on here. And the stories are fun. I know they could be a little overwhelming sometimes because this isn't something anybody would normally say. But usually in the stories, like some big, huge thing is happening. And so someone has to, I don't know, a series just like, that would blow me away if she just said it in Tlingit sometimes.
That's that same word we have in our homework right there that we were having a little bit of a hard time with. Naxati.
Oh, yeah. So with the chat. So if you said naxati, so there was these Anushi who tried to go to Raven's house. Raven lived in this stone house. And they tried to paddle up and bring him this barrel of whiskey. And he was watching them through the window. He didn't want them to come to his house. So he said, let them become stone. And that's what happened.
Oh, geez, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Read that one.
on its own, naxsati would be like, let it become this thing. So there could be a context for this. Like, let's say there's a long time ago, a child was born, and for whatever reason, it didn't have a Tlingit clan. So they might say something like, "Qanaxéedáḳw." Let it become Qanaxéedáḳw. Let the kid become Qanaxéedáḳw.
Oh, is that like, okay, because I say sometimes Tl'anaxéedációt.
Yes, this is the same verb.
Oh, gee whiz.
Just like yeyati can become yenqati or yenaqati. So parts, you're gonna get na, and this right here is qa, but it can contract to just this underline x. Okay, and you're gonna see more and more of these little parts as we keep pulling this stuff apart. But basically, in a verb, you might have an object right here. This is the conjugation stuff. You activate, there's only so many things there, but it's like you put them in these little combinations. Like, oh, future, ga, qa, future, y, perfective. In this case, what you have the conjugation prefix, and then this qa. Now you got hortative. Just see this right here. Here's another way you might have heard this. Nakhtu'at, same thing. It's right there. And so what we're going to do is we'll keep doing this stuff, and you'll keep, we're just doing a lot of pattern recognition right now. And then we see, oh, here's the root right there, T, to be. Even though there's a lot of complicated stuff, like, so we'll pull some things out of here that are very useful.
That was useful. I can't believe that's what I say, that I didn't even recognize that on writing.
Mm-hmm.
But even when we tried to look at the verb root, we never got to naxsati.
Yeah, and so this is, so the point I think a lot of you are probably at now is just saying, well, I think this has got to be like that's got to be the thing. And then you're like, oh, well, here's the classifier then. So this must, and then the next step is to say, oh yeah, there's this sati verb. Maybe it's the sati verb. And then you'll start to see, oh yes, there's a suffix on there, and there's a couple extra things there. And then we're gonna learn what these extra things are, because there's so much stuff in a verb that sometimes we gotta just sort of, we'll just keep going back to it, and we'll start taking deeper and deeper examinations into what the classifier is and does, what these things are and what they do. But yeah, and then you'll start to, and then there'll come a day too, we'll be like, oh yeah, I remember when I saw this thing or heard it, I'd be like, I don't know, whatever. But then it'll catch, right? So now when you're hearing this, like here was one of my jokes. So nach to, it as a prefix usually means let's do this thing. And so I was trying to sell people on this should be the word for lettuce, like the vegetable, because I think that's fun. I got shot. They shot it right.
That was a great dad joke, man.
Committee voted me out right off the committee. All right, 9 more minutes. Let's see how far we can get. She's gonna become Tl'anaxéedáḳw.
Kataya.
Ah.
Adatu atung atan tlash chutle tauk ye yawu nakain.
Knock, your voice got low. I don't know, maybe clear your throat or something.
Cheers.
So adayutu atunk. And this is actually saying she's thinking about it right now. So, and then if you wanted to change this one, adayutuchatunk. I'm thinking about it. It's very useful stuff, right? This is what I'm thinking of. And then you just sort of name the thing, right? A ton, standing there. Oh, we're missing a tone mark. So here's this hun, right? And we hear this one in other ways. Gidahan, right? Atan, she's standing there. Clark, ye ya wunakain. There's a couple things going on here. So this verb is from yawaka, right? That one's it's gonna be hard to sort of catch. I would probably write it like this, maybe. Not just then, fast, or it could mean something like, well, we'll just say it's fast right now. Clock is fast, like clock day, hurry it up. Ye ya wunna keen. She didn't, and at that time, she did not say it fast. So now she's speaking slowly, deliberately. Let's keep it going. We're gonna get there.
Adak.
all
Gook,
you.
David, gook.
After you.
I'll go
Adak.
then.
After you, Alfonso. Adak suye yawaka. Dak sike se Tl'anaxéedáḳw.
Right, so we get this repetition of this phrase again. Aqa away, and then adach away, following that or after that. There's three different ways to say a very similar thing. Aqa away, itch away, adach away. They're all used in a narrative framework. Aqa away literally means going after that. Like it's gonna go get it, right? So he's like, I'm gonna go get some coffee. That's what the ka is doing there. Itch away, following that. So that means to like, like if you went walking and I'm gonna follow you, like a private eye or something, I don't know. And then adach away is coming from that. So conceptually, they're slightly different. I would say aqa away is used to just jump ahead a little bit in the story. Adach away is saying, now that this thing has happened, this other thing is going to happen. So they're tying them together a little bit more closely for cause and effect. Itch away is more like focusing on the sequence of events. Sort of like I went to the bank, then I went to the store, then I went to, because you had to do them in a certain order. Okay. Tsuyeyawaqa, she said it again. What could I ever become? Like there's different ways to interpret that. Like it's really interesting. And y'all are gonna become translators and be living in between these two languages. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Fourth time's always, something usually happens on the fourth time. It's very common in Tlingit stories. Okay, we might do one more, maybe two more. Maybe we'll do one more, and that'll get us to the next page and we'll pick up there.
Yadakun ayeyanaka away. Tl'anaxéedáḳw. Quash aye you do eat to do tan.
Hey, sheesh. So dakun the fourth one. Kek dech nask dakun. First one, second one, third one, fourth one. So you say dakun naka'awe. So she says it after she says it the fourth time. So there's one of these, like another one of these giyu, give way. Just look at them. They're all doing a very similar thing. Like somehow this thing is happening. It's very mysterious. Do eat to do tan. Somebody thought about her. It's a really interesting phrase. It's a really interesting phrase. And so what it's saying here is like after the fourth time she says this, what shall I become? Maybe somebody thought Tl'anaxéedáḳw, and they put that thought in her mind. And that's how she becomes it. That's what we're going to see anyways. Okay, lots more to the story. What are we on? Page 11. How far do we go? It's very long. 47, we're 1/4 of the way through. So there you have it. It's a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun with these. I think they're great to learn and to know. And someone, well, it's up to you guys to know the big versions of these stories. There are small, and sometimes there's variations. But I'm not talking about variations. I'm talking about sometimes they'll tell this story in a very short way. They'll say, oh yeah, this lady with the baby in the woods. Like, what? Yeah, and this is a pretty complete version of Tl'anaxéedáḳw. Scary stuff, kind of weird stuff going on. I know, but some of these older stories just have some of that stuff.
I remember hearing Ethel Montgomery describe a story. She was telling one story, and then she said, and that was like Raven with his yellow leggings, but that's for another day. And I think great storytellers do that. They'll just reference the story, and so the more we know, the more enjoyable it is.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And so there's a set of these stories too that they always come back to. And so part of our work is to do the deep diving, like really looking around. But then there's stuff we could pull out of there that, like, even just studying these great, big, huge stories, that helps us just to say, hey, you know what happened to me the other day? And then I saw this thing, and then this other, and then after that, this other thing. Because that's a lot of what we try to do, I think, with language. And then the other component I think that we'll work on is how to respond to people. Like say, oh yeah, me too, I think that. Oh no, I think it's actually this thing. Like even like if we don't know how to have disagreements, then sometimes like it just blows out of proportion. Like even in English, we don't even know how to disagree sometimes, but just sort of saying like, oh, I heard it differently. Oh yeah, there's this other version, right? It's fun stuff. Okay, have a great weekend. Let's see, keep working on the translation of the Yesh Katukak, and then we'll probably just split some of our time between those two, and then I'll throw some lessons in now and then. But the lessons, as we go back in the stories, we're just looking for these new things that we're finding. And bring questions if you got them.
Kunis Cheese. Have a good weekend as well.
Okay.
Cheese.
Kunis Cheese.
Okay.
Let everyone else say Gunnuf Cheese first. See ya.